This, by the way, for those of you who don't know, today is Flag Day. And perhaps in honor of this day dedicated to the flag, Alex Jones, the nutty right-wing radio broadcaster, has determined that the Orlando tragedy was a false flag. Now, I don't know when in the history of his broadcast or his website, Alex Jones has ever acknowledge that anything is a real flag. Everything to him is a false flag, presumably including the grand old flag itself. So Alex Jones says that the incident was, quote, a false flag terror attack. He says it was he, of course, is the favorite broadcaster of Donald Trump. Donald Trump cites him as if he were a legitimate news source. He also says the attack was the result of Muslim migration, even though the shooter in that attack, who I am not going to name on this program because I'm part of the no-naming movement when it comes to mass shooters, he says this killing was the consequence of Muslim migration, even though this guy who did it was born in the United States. He also claims, of course, that the United States government purposely allowed the shooting in San Bernardino to take place, too. Now, why would the government deliberately allow shootings to take place in Orlando and San Bernardino? Because that gives them the right to impose restrictions on free speech, which we don't restrict, and to take away Americans' guns. Oh, so, this guy, so presumably, I was out in California when a guy accidentally lost control of his car and killed 5 people at an open-air flea market. So presumably Alex Jones thinks that was a false flag attack so they can take away our cars. He says our government and the governments of Europe allowed these huge hordes of radical jihadis in, and even allowed them in without vetting them on record, landing them in airports and not even checking their passports, IDs, or visas. Actually, it is extraordinarily hard for a refugee to get entrance into the United States. The United States has been widely condemned by people across the globe for its inhumanity and not doing more for the refugees that it essentially helped create by invading Iraq and destabilizing that entire region, which gave rise to ISIS. In fact, the fanatical national security mentality represented by the likes of Alex Jones and Donald Trump is precisely what created the refugee tragedy we see today. As a result, refugees are trapped in something that Yanis Varoufakis, the progressive in Greece, has described as refugee camps. So congratulations, Alex Jones and Donald Trump. When you win, people suffer. Now, as long as we're on the right-wing lunatic beat, Roger Stone, the longtime Republican operative, who is now Donald Trump's mini-me and evil gnome, gargoyle, was published in one of these trashy right-wing websites. I can't remember which one, or I won't say. That's part of my no-name policy. And unfortunately was linked to by Politico as slandering Hillary Clinton's aide, Huma Abedin. Now, whatever disagreements I may have with Hillary Clinton, this kind of Islamophobic filth should be off limits, but of course it is not. Roger Stone, it's time some America got some answers about Huma Abedin. And now he writes in the subtitle, chic gal pal, mild-mannered politician's wife, harmless clothes horse, Saudi plant, innocent aide, handler. Huma Abedin is vice chair of Hillary's 2016 campaign, but she's much, much more than that. She's the person closest to the powerful woman and most powerful woman in American politics, and perhaps the next president. This is the nutcase is writing. Huma has been described as variously as Hillary's body woman, a sort of glorified go-to personal maid, gentle confidant, and by others as an Islamic spy. She may be all these things because, as we shall see, Huma Abedin has an interesting and complex complex career history. Of course, only lunatics and slanderers would describe Huma Abedin as an Islamic spy because of her ancestry or where she was born. And it's interesting that the slander comes from Roger Stone, who has been variously described as a longtime Republican operative, a cynical political hack, a failed biological experiment from an evil weapons laboratory, and a serial defiler and slayer of tiny creatures of the forest. Now, I'm not personally accusing him of any of these things, of course, but I think America deserves some answers about Roger Stone and whether he is, in fact, the enemy of creatures of the forest he claims to be. I'm not raising these claims because of myself or because of any political feelings I might have towards Roger Stone. I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for the squirrels. That's why I asked this question. Now, he goes on to say that she was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Well, that's certainly sinister, isn't it? We can't trust a Midwesterner. Her father was Indian and born in New Delhi. Well, of course, that's sinister, too. So he goes and does the whole 6 degrees of separation thing that the right so much loves to do, that her father knew a guy who knew somebody else who bought a plane ticket to a city where somebody lived who was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, of course, you can do that with anybody. That is the power of the whole 6 degrees of separation formulation. You can use it. You know, this is what they did to attack people during the Red Scare in the 1950s. Well, isn't it true that I forget the exact term. If Tom were here, he would probably remember, but known compatriot of, known comrade of, weren't you in the same room as? It used to be that you did that by making people out to be communists. Now you do it to make people out to be an Islamic spy. But, you know, whenever anybody is spending, I would argue, wasting their time reading this kind of nonsense from Roger Stone, you know what they're not doing? They're not thinking about the fact that all of the recent tragic mass shootings in American history that have taken place because the shooter had access to an AR-57. They're not talking about that. And when Donald Trump, and may he get what he justly deserves in life, when Donald Trump goes out and says Obama should resign because there have been so many mass shootings during his presidency, he's not pointing out that there have been mass shootings during Obama's presidency because his Republican predecessor repealed the assault weapons ban that would have kept these weapons out of the hands of some of these mass shooters. Because again, I remind you folks that the shooter who shall not be named, who did this, perpetrated this tragedy in Orlando, bought weapons the week before the shooting, even though he was being investigated by the FBI, even though he appeared to have serious personality issues and adjustment issues and so on, even though he may be, now I don't know the details on this, may have even expressed violent intent toward people at that club, he was still able, with no problem, to go out and buy weapons the week before he committed the shooting. Now, this is the kind of thing we should be thinking about and talking about as a nation. Why aren't we talking about it as a nation? In part because nuts are responding to people like Roger Stone or the has-been country Western singer Ronnie Dunn, who said something about how Obama's only talking about gun control because he's afraid to talk about Islamism, as if we've been talking about anything else except radical Islamic terrorism for the last 15 years. I'm not saying that terrorism is not a threat. I'm saying guns are also a threat. And if you're willing to talk about one and not the other, then, pal, you're either trying to change the subject because you're a cynic and a hack, or you're the unwitting dupe of those who are. We'll be right back after this. I'm Richard R.J. Eskow, sitting in for Thom Hartmann. Stick with us.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.